So the newest trailer for the Halo TV show has came out, and I have some thoughts about it. Overall, it's mostly positive. It looks really good. Great even, at some points. I don't know why, but for ages I've been worrying about this show, specifically because of one thing: the budget. I was worried the show would look cheap and tacky, and as much as I loved Halo 4 Forward Unto Dawn and Halo Nightfall, they both looked super cheap and just bad. The acting and story would always be good, but its costumes, or rather the armour, the props and the settings would just have this sort of cheap and ill-fitting kind of look to them. This, however, doesn't. Mostly. It honestly looks like The Expanse to me, which is a great show, and it's a great thing that it's reminding me of The Expanse. The Spartan and Marine armours look great, the guns look correct, the Covenant looks Covenant, the UNSC looks like the UNSC, the backgrounds look fleshed out and lived in, the vehicles look amazing. Some serious money and effort was put into this, and I'm feeling much more hopeful for the series, to be honest. Now, for those wondering about the setting of the show, this is set in what 343 are calling the Silver Timeline. So the show exists in its own timeline and universe, separate from the main timeline of the games and novels, meaning they can have a bit more creative freedom with the story and characters and can retread familiar story beats from the games and novels without having to stick to them 100%, which is a good way to do it in my opinion. It means that if the show is crap and awful, it means we as fans can just simply ignore it, and then 343 can ignore it as well, instead of having this baggage of a bad show that they need to work around for the rest of the game franchise. They can just straight up ignore it. Okay, that's the positive stuff out of the way. What about the sort of controversial or stuff I didn't like or stuff that I'm unsure about? Thankfully, there's not a lot. There's only 2, maybe 3 things I'm kind of worried about. Number 1, Master Chief's voice. It's different. It's not Steve Downes, and honestly, I had a knee-jerk reaction when I heard it. It's going to take some time to get used to, but I'm sure I'll like it eventually. But this raises a question. Why wouldn't they just have Steve Downes dub over the Chief, since Chief will never remove his helmet anyway? Unless Chief in this show will remove his helmet and talk to the camera. That way when Chief does speak to us helmetless, they won't have to awkwardly dub over the actor, because we'd all be used to the new voice by that point. That's one reason I can think of. Another reason, maybe the actor had it in his contract that he wanted to be the voice, or other stuff. But even when you look back to Forward Unto Dawn, they never used Steve Downes' voice either. And to be honest, I never expected them to use his voice for this in the first place. So the only reason I kind of bring it up is kind of because of the number 2 complaint, which is Cortana. Jen Taylor is back voicing her, which is great. But so far that's the only thing I like about her. She looks bad. And it's not because of the lack of blue or purple, although that is a reason. It's just the way she looks. It's the eyes for me. She just has this deadness to her eyes that just gives me this extreme uncanny valley feeling to it. It just looks off. And I don't like how she's wearing normal military clothes. Cortana's whole thing was that she was the naked blue lady. But she wasn't even really naked, because she was always covered in these weird cyber glyphs and symbols and coding that just made her more artificial feeling. Also, it was her way of standing out amongst all the other AIs that the UNSC used. She was unique and different, and her look expressed that. She always kind of felt like a female Dr. Manhattan to me. But if they're doing a thing where her character arc over the course of the show is her slowly becoming more like the Cortana that we know, then that'll be cool. Because right now, she just straight up looks like a clone of Dr. Halsey, which she is. But Cortana never wanted to be known as just that. She wanted to be her own thing, to be independent. So maybe as the show goes on, she tries to look a little less like Halsey over time and adopts more of her traditional features. I think that'd be kind of cool. But if this is how she is going to look for the whole show, needs improving. And yes, she needs to be blue or purple. We're all thinking it, but it needs to be done. Also, the music. The music better be good, because Halo's music is super important to the feel, the tone, and the identity of the franchise. I'm hoping that was just trailer music that we heard. and not an actual representation of the kind of music we'll get in the show. Because the big classical space opera music that Halo is known for, it needs to be there. And I don't mean like, oh, occasionally we hear the Halo theme. It's like, no, we need to have the musical cues that we know from the trilogy in there. We need Halo music in the Halo TV show. Simple. But overall, I'm impressed by what we've seen, and it's beyond what I expected. My only other worry though is that the show might focus too much on the drama of things. Like, this is Halo. We need epic battles in here. Not all the time, but this is taking place during a war, and I don't want the war to take a back seat. They need to strike a good balance between character development and the war. 343 have always said that they envision a band of brothers like Halo TV show, and Band of Brothers balanced that perfectly. You grew attached to all the characters, and when those characters got into battles, you genuinely cared for them and feared for their outcome. But also, they went from location to location because of the war. They lost friends and they changed because of the war. The war was a driving factor for their story, and I want that in this TV show. Because I don't want the show to just develop into one of these sci-fi shows that has a lot of talking and exposition between characters that are either sitting in an office or they're all standing around a table with a hologram in the middle of it so they can talk about it. We need the action to deliver as much as the story, and action is story. Good action anyway. As for when this comes out, it will be on Paramount Plus on March 24th. For my fellow UK residents, we don't have access to that streaming service yet, but apparently Sky TV is trying to work out a deal to get their shows over here. So if you've got Sky, we might potentially get Halo with it. So I hope that's true, otherwise we're going to have to pirate it, and I don't want to do that. But that's my thoughts on the show so far. Expectations were low and this exceeded them. But what do you all think? What are your worries? What do you like? What do you not like? Let me know. And hopefully this is the show that we've all been waiting for. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye bye.